And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. That's right. I said welcome back because, folks, I know you were just listening to our stuff and you came back because you wanted more. I don't blame you. That was a brilliant move. We have a lot more for you. Why do we have more for you? Because this is the podcast that's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. And you cracked the code. Our guest today is, in fact, a podcaster. That's right. Folks, this is a place where we all come together to help each other out, to raise each other up. And this is the place where the rising tide truly raises all ships. So let's get sailing and bring in our guest today. He is a business therapist and coach, host of the Digital Leader Show. Please welcome Dan Goodstein. Dan, how you doing today, brother?
I'm well, Rory. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming on, man. This is some interesting territory. You've got an interesting podcast. I really liked it when I got a chance to check it out. Before we dive into all that stuff, tell everybody, who is Dan Goodstein? What are you about? What brings you here today?
Yeah, sounds good. Well, good to meet everybody virtually. I refer to myself as a recovering tech guy. I went to school for technology, thought I was going to be a computer engineer, and I realized very early on that I was kind of better at the business side of tech than the technical side of tech. I grew up in very entrepreneurial environments. My dad had his own business back in the day when nobody else, at least that I knew, did. And so I kind of grew up in that atmosphere. And then I realized, after college that I wanted to be out on my own. And so, I was fortunate to work with some big Fortune 500 brands early in my career. And then found myself in the media business for a while, which was interesting, getting to do work with a lot of local businesses and community groups and things like that. And I've since landed in a place where I'm kind of at the intersection of the tech world and the media world, running a couple professional associations, industry associations, in addition to the business coaching that you mentioned that I do.
That's wonderful. Now, the your title is business therapist, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So how does that
Yeah,
equate?
yeah, well, it's funny. I would have all of these, through networking and like I said, the professional association I run. We'd have all these kind of like on the record official conversations with executives, and then when we got off the recording part or we got off the stage and went to the bar afterwards, I just found myself kind of asking people kind of off the record questions and things, and found that they would kind of open up and people that told me that they on stage that they kind of had everything figured out a drink and a half later, they'd be sitting on the proverbial couch, telling me about all their problems for 45 minutes, and I really enjoy that. I really enjoy kind of getting beyond the bureaucracy or the corporate stuff, or even, for smaller businesses, the facade that, a lot of people tend to put up, and really, get into the core of, what makes people tick and what their problems are. And so, I started deciding I wanted to allocate a chunk of time every week to, coaching founders, startups, small businesses, in addition to the corporate stuff I do. I decided to call it, business therapy, because I had this vision of people just kind of laying on the couch and talking through all the challenges that they have on a day in day basis.
I love that. As you're coaching these folks, exactly what are you coaching them on?
Yeah, so it depends on who they are, but a couple categories. One, especially in the small business space, some of it's just general, business management. People that have their own businesses in particular, I find, don't always take a step back to kind of work on the business because they're so stuck working in the business every day. And so, maybe it's just an outside perspective. It could be finance related, could be management related, could be sales and marketing and customer experience related. And I spend a lot of time because of that background. I spend a lot of time, not exclusively, but a good chunk of it helping tech companies. And tech companies are often founded by very technical people, right? They may be, really, really innovative and have something very unique from a technical perspective, but don't always know how to run a business. Or if they do know how to run a business, they might not really get the sales and marketing aspects of running a business. So that's kind of my area of expertise. And then more recently, because I run this technology association, of course, there's conversations every day about how do I use AI in my business. So we do a lot of that as well.
Sure. I mean, I know AI is, on the tip of everybody's tongue right now, of course. So, what sorts of things do you specialize with in AI, or maybe not specialize? What do you use the most, type of thing with AI in terms of your coaching?
Yeah, it's so there's a couple different categories. I mean, one is, if you're a smaller business, there's never been a better time from the standpoint of getting things done with less resources, less budget, right? I mean, AI now, especially the most recent AI is not new, as a lot of people know, but this Gen AI thing over the last couple of years has really kind of democratized it to a point where anybody can get on with ChatGPT and start doing stuff with it. So a lot of what I advise is allowing people that maybe have even a side hustle or a smaller traditional business where they feel like they don't have the resources. There's a lot of AI out there that can help with content and creative and marketing, sales. We have a lot of programs running now, actually at the moment, where there's kind of these AI sales teams that prospect for you and interact with potential sales targets for you, right? So you don't have to, for a founder who's got to wear 1,000 different hats, now you actually have tools for each of those categories to help you do that in a much easier way than if you were, trying to do this 10, 15 years ago.
Interesting, that AI sales team.
Yeah, there's some really interesting technology. We call it conversational AI is the category. But and some of it is stuff that, people, can do on a manual basis, just using ChatGPT. But there's some platforms out there that we're using and helping companies implement actually that will help you identify your core messaging, your differentiation versus competitors, who your ideal target addressable market is, find their information across the web from all the different data sources that are out there, and then custom write emails and even make phone calls and those sorts of things that are actually custom, so you don't get these like very generic either mass emails or automated emails that you can tell wasn't really personalized for you, and you just kind of hit delete. These are actually being written individually, or calls being made individually and customized at scale, but to your unique, what the AI can figure out about you from scraping the web, scraping
Wow.
LinkedIn, scraping your social media, right?
I mean, that's fascinating and frightening as all get out at the same
Right.
time, right? I mean, I'm an old sales guy. I'm an old sales dog, like decades in sales in different areas. And the old adage I mean, for my entire life has really been, hey, the one thing about sales is you're always going to be able to find a job. You're always going to need salespeople. Doesn't sound like that's going to be the case in the future.
No, I think that's right. I mean, if you think of when I grew up, I grew up with a lot of great sales mentors as well. The art of the sale. I don't think that's replicatable yet. But what I think is, and of course, all these things are subject to, hey, every year there's a new thing comes out, right? But
Right.
right now, I would say it's actually back to that. How do you use AI as a tool? If you've spent time in sales, most salespeople are not good at the entire sales process, right? And if you are a really good sales guy, you probably don't want to be doing research and prospecting and cold calling, right? So, even when I've built sales teams, it's usually there's like a research person, and then there's a cold call or SDR guy, and then it goes to a salesperson who can do solution development and closing and stuff like that. And if you can, get your closer, get your sales guy or gal, in a lot of really qualified meetings, they'll do better. It's the other grunt work that is very time consuming and where many of them are not good at, whatever. So that I think that's the part where like a lot of these technologies and a lot of the benefits of AI, you can really have people focus on what they're good at and not have them be doing all the menial work because prospecting is a needle in a haystack routine, right? So if AI and technology can find you that needle and let you focus on whatever the analogy is, working with that needle, more needles, then you maximize on what you're good at and don't have to do the part of the job that most people don't like doing.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I don't know any salesperson who wouldn't rather just go into a meeting, sit down, take the meeting, and try to close. That's what we
Yeah,
do,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So no, I
And then
get
the
you.
follow up, right? All the work that happens after the fact. You have a call and you gotta, have your notes, transcribe your notes, put your notes in a CRM, remember when to follow up, and in a lot of cases just be chasing, right? And that's just
Right.
not, a human. Like I said, I don't know anybody who likes chasing people for a living.
Not at all. Not at all. No, I understand. All right. So you're working with entrepreneurs, you're working with small businesses, things like this. So in a lot of these cases, overhead's a big deal. And so that's kind of why the chat comes into play, right?
Yeah, it helps, right? I mean, it used to be that you couldn't implement these things because the capital expense was just too much and the ROI was difficult. Every founder, CEO, for example, even a small company would love to have a personal assistant, right? Now you can have a personal assistant, right? I don't schedule any of my own meetings anymore. I have an AI assistant that does all of that for me, right? So it's just one small example, but there's 100 examples like that. Research, copywriting, social media management. We talked about sales, kind of marketing. There's even some, although it's early stage, there's even some, financial analysis and forecasting, stuff happening. So yeah, the short version is you can do less, less, you can do more with less, right? You can, have the expertise and it's not perfect and you still got to be involved. It's not, completely outsource it, but you can get to a place where you almost have like a team of of experts at your disposal for all the different areas of your business without having to hire a CFO and a head of sales and a head of marketing and an assistant and all these things. So it allows you to yeah, do more with less.
So you're a tech guy. You come through that, you're more of a business guy, self-admitted, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, clearly you have a penchant for sales. I'm just guessing based on talking to you.
Yeah, I've done it my whole life,
Yeah.
accidentally and then purposely, right? When you're in your own business, or when I started my dad's business, you don't realize you're selling, but you're always selling, right? As a business owner, as a founder, whether you're selling customers, investors, other stakeholders, what have you, you have to know how to kind of sell. If you're networking and doing those things, you got to be able to do that. And then when I started working with larger brands, I thought that big Fortune 500 companies would be have this stuff all figured out, and it turns out they don't. They just spend a lot of money and throw a lot of people at it, and so I've been fortunate to work with the likes of Xerox and HP and Cisco and companies like that over the years, and now trying to kind of leverage the corporate learnings from the last 15 years of doing this or so, and trying to parlay that into helping, small and mid-sized companies as well.
No, that's perfect. I can absolutely see it. So, all right, you're helping these smaller and mid-sized companies. You're doing, business therapy. People are pouring their hearts out to you after they've had a couple of drinks. I mean, I love the business model. It absolutely works perfectly. What in the world makes you go, you know what I want to do next? I want to have a podcast. Where does that
You
come
know,
from?
do you know what's fun? Like I said, I have a media background, but it was more traditional media, local community and print and stuff like that. And we were having all these conversations. So this is one of the positive things that came out of the pandemic, right? Where we were trying to figure out how do we, you know, continue to create value for the professional association that I run, create ongoing value to members without, having them come to events, which was our main, mode of operation before COVID. And so, we had this big network. We have this big network. It's 130,000 members. It's global, people all over the world, looking for help and advice. And prior to all of that, they would just, come to events and network, right? So, one, we wanted to create, more virtual networking and brokering and matchmaking and those sorts of things for the association members, which we did. And then, we were just talking about content and other ways. And I was talking to, I'd have like a weekly call with my advisors, this advisory board that I had created. And we just had these great conversations where it was supposed to be a half an hour conversation. We'd be, going on and on for an hour, sharing ideas and advice and debating different topics and where's business going to go and what's going to happen with the future of the workforce and all these things. And then I don't even know if it was me or it was my colleague said, maybe we should just start recording this. Like, we have these conversations every week. They go on for like an hour, hour and a half. Maybe we should turn this into, originally it was a LinkedIn Live and then a podcast. Maybe we just do this publicly. And, if three people like it, great. If five people get value out of it, great. We're doing it anyway. And it turned into, I think we just did our 150th episode now. So it's been going on for a while, and it's fun. It's not a sponsored thing. We don't have we actually have a couple advertisers now, but we didn't start out that way. We just did it because we, wanted to provide value to people out there in a really kind of, scary and uncertain time during the pandemic. And I enjoy doing it. It's actually one of the things I enjoy doing the most every week. So.
Nice. All right. Excellent. So with the podcast, first of all, congratulations on hitting 150 episodes. That's a milestone. That's great.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
thank you.
Way to go. For folks who have not had the opportunity to listen to this yet, if they tune into the Digital Leaders Show, what kind of content are they going to be expecting? What can they hope to get out of it?
Yeah, so it's all about helping business leaders transform for the digital world. So it's kind of one part business, one part kind of humanities, if you will. We talk a lot about industry headlines and what's going on in the world of work and those sorts of things. And then how do you adjust your strategy, your business to be a more digital enterprise. And so, no surprise. We're talking a lot about AI these days, but also other kind of technology levers that are, relevant to anybody running a business, whether you're running your own business or you're running a department at a large company. These are things that you have to, be doing or you're going to fall behind, right? So you don't want to have that proverbial blockbuster moment, right? You want to sort of stay ahead of these things and be up to speed. So it's not a technical conversation. It's more of a business conversation, but for business leaders around what's happening in technology. We've had some great guests, some big companies, some small companies. We had the former chief digital officer from Starbucks on a couple weeks ago, the guy who basically invented the Starbucks app and loyalty program. So again, that's the same kind of theme of trying to take ideas and concepts from big companies and turn them into usable advice for anybody.
Nice. The Now the ones I heard were interview episodes. So obviously I didn't get to hear all 150. But do you do solo episodes at all, or is everything an interview?
Yeah, we do a mixture. We try to have at least one guest episode every month. But yeah, so we the first part of the show we talk about headlines. So it's very timely. Like we literally talk about the day's headlines. So we'll talk about what's going on in the world of business and technology. That's kind of the first part, and then the second part is kind of a main topic for the week based on what we see going out there. And I'm like I said, I'm fortunate in the sense that I have a lot of conversations with members of the association on a week to week basis, and so I have a sense of what's on the minds of a lot of these companies as well, and try to find the intersection of that and what's happening in headlines and that kind of thing.
Sure. Now, the I know that the podcast, of course, is helping to promote the business, but how do you go about promoting the podcast?
Do you know? I don't know if it's helping I mean, as a marketer myself, I always think about that. Like, am I actually driving a business from doing this? Like I said, that was not the original goal of it, actually. And so, but at some point, some of my colleagues are like, "Dan, you're doing this every week. You got to get some kind of ROI out of it." So, I probably should revisit that strategy. It's kind of like the shoemakers' kids don't have shoes. I don't know if we're doing a good job marketing it for that purpose, but yeah, we've had some shows kind of go viral. We have a membership that we send it to. So, so we have 130,000 members. So we promote it to them. We have a pretty big LinkedIn following, mostly LinkedIn. We're on YouTube as well, but it's mostly a LinkedIn and an existing member following. And then, as I know you spend a lot of time with podcasters, one of the things that we like to have guests because they give good perspective, and you don't want to just hear me talk all day every week. But the other reason is it brings in other networks, right? So other groups of people that haven't been on exposed to it, come in through those guests. So we found that's a really good way of expanding our viewership and also our association's membership. Is getting guests that have their own audiences to come on and promote it as well.
Now, anybody who's listening to this is going to hear, you've got those numbers in terms of membership and following and everything else. I mean, those are great numbers. How'd you go about building those from back in the beginning when you first started?
Yeah, I mean, we've been at it for a long time. I mean, the association started actually in 1993. It was originally focused on technology outsourcing. And so for 20 years, the previous founder, the previous CEO and founder, kind of built up this network. It was the only industry neutral association in the technology outsourcing space. And then when AI and automation started becoming a part of the conversation, which, believe it or not, it's probably 10, 11 years ago now, we kind of pivoted into that space. So we've been kind of, half, we joke around that we've been kind of, half smart and half lucky to kind of spot the trends and focus on, those things. And already had this when we started kind of moving over to automation and AI, we already had this network of tech execs that were part of our previous association, and so it wasn't too hard to kind of pivot them. And then for a long time, we were the only industry neutral group and event conference for automation and kind of enterprise AI. So we ran events up until COVID for a number of years before really anybody else was. Even like the Gartners of the world weren't really following the space the way that far back. So that helped kind of build the audience, and we decided to. There's a lot of different business models. One of the things I do a lot of is, business models with people. There's a lot of different business models. We decided we weren't going to charge for our membership. We wanted to have the largest qualified network of executives, not just a network of people that were willing to pay to be a member. So we made it a free membership, and we monetized it through sponsorships and advertising and things like that. But gave away a lot of content, advice, and other resources to members to kind of get them in and get value out of it.
Nice. So you've monetized the membership. A minute ago, you had said you really hadn't monetized the podcast, but the membership is monetized
Correct.
in
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then on the podcast end of it, you haven't monetized it much, or because you said that you had a couple of advertisements, I thought.
Yeah, we have some sponsors that sponsor activity and content through the association that we've put on as advertisers for the podcast, but we don't have like a dedicated advertising program for the podcast.
Got it. So the podcast then is, like you said, primarily educational for folks to kind of tune into.
It is, for a long time, the majority, almost all the content we were doing was sponsored content because that was our model. But when when we were talking about doing this thing and taking our private conversations and doing them live, I kind of said to the team, I said, I don't want to have to hold back any punches because somebody's sponsoring it, right? I want to be able to say whatever I want to say, and not be concerned about insulting a sponsor, or can't talk about IBM because IBM's a sponsor, right? That kind of stuff. So yeah, actually, we try to avoid that. So the ones that we have now they're not even sponsors of the podcast per se. They're just sponsors of the association, and we've kind of, at least until now, kept it that way.
It's interesting. Okay, and I get what you mean. I've heard your podcast, so I'm hearing that loud and clear. You get a little edgy once in a while on your podcast over there. I liked your one where you had an opinion on what was it? Broadcast TV is dead.
Yeah, yeah.
So is that the type of thing? I mean, you definitely have some opinions every once in a while.
Yeah, I want to I want to talk about what I think is really happening, right? I don't want to just talk about, we have a lot of members that, have big businesses devoted to things not changing, or have big businesses devoted to something. And the reality is, usually somewhere in the middle, right? It's not going to replace everybody's jobs. We're not going to go to Terminator tomorrow, but it's not going to be the way it was 20 years ago either, right? So, and I feel like I felt for a while that, and I'm partially responsible for this because we had a sponsorship based business, but I kind of feel like, as I speak to customers now, about the projects that they've implemented over the last 10 years, what became very clear to me is that the narrative in the industry was driven by marketing, not necessarily by reality. So I
Hmm.
didn't want to I wanted to have something where we could kind of call that out. And as my wife will tell you, I like playing devil's advocate. So I'll just do like debate club. Like if you take one perspective, I'll just take the other perspective and go with it. And I think it makes for a good conversation. You kind of figure out both extremes, and let people make their own decisions as to how they feel.
Yeah, you don't sound like you're taking a real definitive side or anything in your broadcast. Yeah, but you are asking some tough questions in there.
Yeah, I think it's I guess I try to provoke a little bit, and get people to just discuss and debate, because that's it's usually you know it's usually the questions that they don't get asked that the corporate compliance officer doesn't want them to say, or whatever. So that to me, it's like we talked about before, right? It's not what the people say on stage, it's what they say at the cocktail party afterwards, right?
Right. That's another thing I was wondering about. If I'm interviewing someone who's, running a podcast, 9 times out of 10, there isn't something that's like off limits. But if you're interviewing, higher up executives in the corporate world, I would imagine you probably get a list of, hey, we're not talking about this type of thing.
Yeah, so when our traditional, like when we do webinars and things, it's pretty pre-scripted. We're talking with, corporate execs, and, their PR people or what have you have decided, what's allowed and what's not allowed. If you look at the podcast, you will see a lot of former chief digital officer, former head of Amazon Alexa's privacy. And the reason for that is that just that people are more forthcoming. Like I had the guy who was responsible for privacy at Amazon, for Alexa, and I asked him some hard questions that he was a little defensive in the sense that it was his baby, right? But he was also fair. He admitted where there were gaps in their strategy around, private. This was about privacy. My feeling is that he was more honest than he would have been if he was still employed by Amazon, right?
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds like a pretty easy job since I don't think there is any privacy at Amazon. Am I real far off from that?
Yeah, well, that was kind of the stance that I took. Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go back and I didn't catch that episode, but I want to hear that one now. So
Yeah,
I'm
actually, he was an
definitely
interesting
going
guy.
back.
So he had two really interesting roles. One was around privacy around Alexa, and the other one was he ran the last mile delivery, which is basically now all those Amazon trucks that you see, delivering your packages instead of UPS and FedEx. So he was part of the team that launched that and launched the it seems so second nature now, but the initial fleet of Amazon Prime planes was something that was direct direct kind of mandate from the CEO, and he was part of the team that operationalized that.
Wow. All right. Well, hey, another claim to fame. That's awesome. We talked about AI, of course, and I know that you do a lot of work with that. In terms of the podcast itself, how do you utilize AI in the podcast?
So we have an AI tool that actually takes the recording and tries to figure out like keywords that are trending and helps to do editing, post editing. So it'll make recommendations on smaller segments of because it's a similar to you, it's like a usually a 45 minute, sometimes a little more, a little less, but typically a 45 minute piece. And so of course we post the recording of the whole thing, but then we'll post smaller snippets of the content. And so we use that for that. We use AI for scheduling, but I'll be honest with you, we don't use it's not completely automated yet. It's still a pretty manual process. Whereas I've got entire aspects of the sales and marketing team, automated with AI. That's still, it's still subjective, right? So it may come up with some keywords, but I may just like the way somebody answered a question, or maybe it was something provocative and sharp that I said that I want to make sure makes it to the highlight reel. So it's still there's some very good tools out there, but as far as AI, there's AI that writes the summary and the description and will summarize it for you, that kind of thing. But it's still a largely manual process.
Okay, nice, nice. Now, you've mentioned your team several times. I take it you're not doing your own editing at this point with what you've built, right?
I'm not, but I have a small team. I have really one person that is, full time and almost exclusively devoted to content. And then, she's using a bunch of these, like I said, these tools to kind of help her.
Is she an actual employee and part of the team that way, or is she, like a VA type thing?
She is. I mean, actually, she started as kind of an assistant, and she's become, just because of how these things have evolved, she's become pretty much a content manager now.
Interesting.
So because it's one of the few areas that we haven't completely automated or been able to use AI end to end for. So and it's an important piece for us, right? So she's kind of dedicated to that. It's interesting. It's an interesting question you asked because, her role was probably, like a lot of these, great support people, jack of all trades. I mean, she did everything from sales to customer management to finance to, content, probably evenly when she started, probably evenly broken down, split out into all the main categories you would think of running a business. And now she spends probably, like I said, 90+% of her time on content. And that's not because we've hired a bunch of other people to do the other stuff. It's because we've automated and been able to use AI for a lot of the other stuff. So it's where I see the best kind of ROI, if you will, from human interaction still.
Nice. Interesting. Yeah, and the reason that I ask is because I get that question a lot. Um, there's certain things people now are having AI do for them where they normally would have used a VA or an assistant for. But then there does come a point, if you're really progressing in your podcasting and in your business and, that type of thing, where you want to start thinking about bringing on teammates. So just curious, in terms of your experience, did you hit a certain point that said, "Hey, it's time to get a teammate in here," or or did you just start that way and say, "Hey, I'm not even dealing with this from the get-go, so I'm bringing somebody in to handle this stuff."
Yeah, I found that so I initially brought somebody in really reassigned somebody who we already had, but yeah, brought somebody in because I was starting to become limited by the workload, right? And so, I realized I could do a lot more content if I focused on what I'm good at, which is the conversations and the content and the playing devil's advocate and that kind of stuff. So, if I spent half my time on that and half my time doing, a lot of the stuff that she does, then I just wouldn't get as much content out, right? So now, she's allowed me to kind of, focus on the creative side and the business side, and I can hand something, off and know that it's gonna, do, I'm gonna get out of it what I want to get out of it, and I can keep focused on, again, back to the same mantra, right? Focus on what you're good at, and get someone, something else to do the stuff you're not good at or you don't want to do.
It's, I mean, that's great advice, period, in pretty much everything. So I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. Um, you've done a lot of episodes and you've talked to a lot of folks. Do you have one that kind of just stands out to you? Like, man, there was that one.
Oh, wow. In a good way or a negative way?
You either one, whatever just came to your mind first.
We've had, so you always have like no matter how much you plan and how much you give people instructions and you do your sound checks and all that stuff, you always have like the occasional like disaster. We do ours live. So, you always have that disastrous, like, they can't hear you. Or there's a delay and you're talking over. So we had one guy, I won't call him out, but you think like this guy's a tech executive. He should be able to figure out how to get, a web-based app to work, Zoom or what have you. And he just couldn't. And it was just very, very, very frustrating. You got to kind of roll with the punches. You do anything live, you got to just kind of roll with the punches. Fortunately, I have a co-host, so yeah, we were able to kind of just talk to each other. Otherwise, you're kind of just talking to yourself if it's just you. But we've had to, and every time it happens, we have a meeting. We figure out what went wrong. We add it to our process and our checks and try to improve and try to get better. But it's showbiz, babe, right? There's always going to be something. So that always sticks out. And if I get nervous, which I don't really get nervous anymore doing it, but that's the nerve-wracking part. It's like, is the technology going to work today, or we're going to just be floundering around there? But for the most part, it's been good. Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned my probably two of my favorites. Hearing somebody who was, in the boardroom having a conversation like at an iconic brand like Starbucks. And I said to him on the podcast, like, it seems so obvious now, but at the time that they launched the Starbucks app, there were no apps like that. There were no
Mm.
loyalty apps. There were almost no payment apps. I mean, they invented a category by having an app that was, a brand and an experience, like we all know with Starbucks. That was also a loyalty program. That was also a mobile payment, mobile first payment platform that didn't really exist at the point, wasn't mainstream at least at that point, all in one. And then also it's also humbling in a sense because we see these things as consumers. We're like, well, that guy must be a genius. But he admitted to me, because they didn't expect it to turn out exactly how that turned out. There was a mandate that they wanted to be customer service centric, and they wanted to have that brand that everybody knows. But they were doing loyalty on cards. Like, they had, every time you bought a cup of coffee, they were sending out a paper card in the mail after you ordered your cup of coffee with a actual star on it, right? People don't remember. I didn't remember that. And then byproducts. They created basically a bank,
Hmm.
because all these people, in order to, and it wasn't intended, but it ended up being a really nice side effect, maybe the best ROI, where in order to redeem your stars, you had to pay with the mobile app. And in order to pay with the mobile app, people would preload money onto these gift cards in the app. So they had a float where they were able to invest that money, report that money, earn interest on that money. They basically created a bank in the process, and now it's, like I said, it's pretty second nature. All their competitors do it, other brands are doing it, but they were really the first. So anyway, hearing that story and how it came about and what was planned and what wasn't planned, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's inspirational, but it's also humbling in the sense that it reminds me that everybody gets dressed with the same, puts one leg in at a time, and anybody could have the next idea like that.
Yeah, that would be absolutely fascinating to hear about. Yeah. I mean, because it was sort of ingenious what they did. The way
Yeah.
they did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
And like you
love
said,
that.
half intended and half unintended. So that's the reality of it.
That's the recipe for most of the great things in life, right?
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
love that. All right. I always ask a corny question, and I'm going to hit you with it now. When it comes to doing the podcast itself, what is it about doing your podcast that you love the most, and what is it about doing your podcast that you just absolutely hate the most?
Hmm. So it's the same thing actually.
All
So what I
right.
love and I hate. So I alluded to the fact I was in the media business for a while. So we were, running newspapers, and I was one of these like deadline junkies. Like we'd have it was a weekly circulate, a weekly paper. So, the first couple days you're feeling like, fat and lazy from the previous thing and you're the honeymoon phase. And then you start doing some work, and then, you get into like the last 2 days before your deadline, and you cram and you just do it. The podcast is kind of like that too, but it's on purpose because we don't want to talk about headlines that are 3 days old by the time we go live, right?
Mm.
So, I'm literally up early the morning of the podcast, looking at 30 different sources, compiling it down, trying to figure out a train of consciousness of what I want to talk about, what devil's advocate I want to play and debate. And I won't even send that list to my co-host until an hour beforehand because I don't want it to be too scripted. So it's very intense from the standpoint of like, it's kind of last minute, right? On purpose. So it's fresh. So it's conversational like this. It's not too scripted. It's current. And it's kind of a rush. It's kind of sounds kind of funny, but when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh my God, why am I doing this to myself? I got an hour and a half to prepare for this thing, and then by the time I'm there, it's just it's fun. Like it's exhilarating and it's fun, and it also promotes something that I think we're losing as a society. There's a great book about this. I'll have to find the name of it for your viewers, but it's about deep work. And it talks about the fact that we don't do deep work anymore as a society because we're so reactive. We're reactive to email and social media and news headlines,
Mm.
ping, ping, ping all the time, notification, notification, and it causes the majority of us to not be able to do deep research, do deep work, and be able to do things at a level that we did years ago. So it's one of the few things that I do where I turn off, I turn off my email, I turn off my phone, I put everything on do not disturb mode, I get no notification, and I'm super focused for 3 hours, whatever it is, on just that, and then everything else I got to deal with at a different time. So I enjoy that. I enjoy being able to kind of focus on that and not get, my wife knows to leave me alone. My dogs are locked in it because I work from home mostly. My dogs have a place where they're supposed to be. The kids know where they're supposed to be, and I just get focus time, and it's kind of fun.
I love your energy, man. I knew we'd get a good answer to that question. That's fantastic. All right, man. Listen, I love everything that you've brought to the table today. It's been great hearing about your podcast. It's been an absolute blast talking to you. Let me just kind of, as we wrap things up and round things out here a little bit. 150 episodes is accomplished. So congratulations again on that.
Yeah, thank
But
you.
um, as you're talking to podcasters out here, what's your best piece of advice to podcasters who are just not quite where you are yet?
I'm going to borrow something from one of the people I follow, which is Gary Vaynerchuk. He talks a lot about this. Just do it. Don't be worried about the quality. Don't be worried about, looking back at, we all have these moments where we look back and we're horrified at what we looked like a year ago or 2 years ago, whatever. And you don't need a $100,000 studio to create content anymore. And actually, in a lot of ways, I think it's more authentic. Like, if you are, a plumber, do your video on site at a customer site, right? If you're a tech company, do it like with the technology. This like fake fake background, fake. I don't even like the fake backgrounds. This fake studio thing. It's just, it's not real, right? Be authentic and just do it and just get content out there, get feedback, tweak, adjust. But it's all about frequency. It's all about frequency, and you get better at it too. Like if you do, I find like in the summertime we go from every week with the podcast to every other week. And every year I say to myself, why am I doing this? Because when too much time goes by, you get rusty, right? It's better to do it, keep your system, keep your process, and just go, 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 go. It keeps you sharper.
Yeah, great advice. I absolutely love it. All right, good deal. All right, business therapist, host of the Digital Leader Show, Dan Goodstein. Dan, thank you so much, man, for coming on, talking about your podcast and your business, and giving out such great advice. I appreciate it, and I've had a blast talking to you. So, hope you had a good time, and thanks for coming on today, man.
My pleasure. Thanks for
All
having
right.
me.
It's been great, folks. Another fantastic episode of the Podcaster Nation. And the reason why we have these awesome episodes with these awesome podcasters and awesome people is because this is the podcast that's about podcasters. It's for podcasters and it's done by podcasters. This is the place, folks. We showed it again today, where the rising tide truly raises all ships. So keep sailing.